Alright, today in geometry we will be doing 3-3, which is proving lines are parallel using transversals. So you're going to notice that this lesson looks very similar to the 3-2 lesson that we just did. So this very first part of the notes is actually review from last time. You'll notice that they're wanting you to name the transversal. There are 4 blanks to name the 4 corresponding angles. Name your alternate interior, alternate exterior, and then consecutive interior. So if you will, pause the video and take a second to fill this one out. Alright, so hopefully you got 1 and 5, 4 and 8, 2 and 6, and 3 and 7 for your corresponding alternates. Alternate interiors are 3 and 5 and 4 and 6. Alternate exteriors 2 and 8 and 1 and 7. And then consecutive interior 3 and 6 and 4 and 5. So that was just a quick review of what we did last time because we will continue to use those specific pairs during this lesson as well. Alright, so here at the beginning we've got conditionals and we've got a converse. So we need to know the difference between them. So a conditional is just simply an if-then statement. So an example of that, if you live in Hays, then you live in Kansas. Is this conditional? Yes. Okay, if you live in Hays, then yes, you have to live in Kansas. However, a converse switches the if and the then part. So that same example, if I switch it, if you live in Kansas, then you live in Hays. Is that true? Well, no, I can live in Kansas but not live in Hays. So what we'll be doing today is we're going to be taking those theorems and postulates that we worked with last time and our justifications, and we're just going to flip them around. So you'll notice I already have the example up for corresponding angles. So last lesson, we always had our parallel lines first, because in our picture we would always see the parallel lines and their symbols being drawn in. So we would say parallel lines mean that my corresponding angles are congruent. Well, on a converse, we're going to flip it around. So we're going to say that because I have congruent corresponding angles, I know my lines are parallel. So on figures in this lesson, those parallel line markings are not going to be drawn in. So there's our corresponding angles converse. We've got our alternate interior angles converse. So congruent alternate interior angles mean we're going to have parallel lines. So we just flip those around from last time. We also have congruent alternate exterior angles will give me parallel lines. And then lastly, supplementary consecutive interior angles will give me parallel lines. So this was the one that was different last time as well. The other 3 were congruent. This one was supplementary. So take a second, make sure you've got those written down, and then we will move on to some example problems. Alright, so with problems like these, we're going to be given some information in each of these figures. And part A wants us to decide if those lines are parallel. Is there enough information for us to determine if they are parallel? And then B wants us to justify why. So if we look at number 6, in my figure I see 2 congruent angles, and if I think about my 4 pairs, well, that one looks like it would match up with alternate exterior. So I say alternate exterior angles are congruent. Hey, that's one of my theorems that we just looked at. Okay? So, yes, I know these are parallel, and my reason? Alternate exterior angles are congruent, which gives me parallel lines. So that's all you have to do. You just look at your figure, see if it matches up to any of those converses that we just talked about. So number 7, so I've got 120 and 120. If I think about my 4 converses, looks like corresponding angles to me, and I know my corresponding angles should be congruent. They should be the same. So yes, because corresponding angles are congruent, because that's what I see in my picture, I know my my lines are parallel. So not too difficult, just got to keep those 4 converses in the back of your head. Now number 8. Number 8 can be a little bit tricky because those are vertical angles. Well, we've dealt with vertical angles a lot, but unfortunately vertical angles are not one of our converses, not one of the ones that we've been talking about primarily these last couple lessons. So this one's kind of on there to see if it can trick you. So unfortunately vertical angles, it doesn't matter if my lines are parallel or not, they're still going to be the same. They're still going to be congruent. So this problem would actually be a no. That doesn't give me any additional information on if those lines are going to be parallel. So for this case, where it's not talking about one of the converses at all, we just have to put not enough information for our justification. So if the converses are not being represented at all in your picture, that's when we use not enough information for our justification. Now, number 9 is a little bit different as well, because if I notice, alright, I've got my 2 angles. They appear to be consecutive interior. They're right next to each other on the interior, but 130 and 55 does not add up to 180. So it is showing me one of those converses, it's just not being represented correctly. Okay, so in this case, we're going to say no, but our reason is going to be that our consecutive interior angles are not supplementary. So those consecutive interior angles are not going to be supplementary, which means my lines are not going to be parallel. So that's the difference between 8 and 9. I did have a little more information related to my problem on 9 than I did on 8. Alright, number 10. Number 10 tells me that I've got 2 angles, consecutive interior again, and it tells me that they are congruent, but in order for these to be parallel, I have to know that they're both 90, because I would have to have it equal 180. So just knowing that they're congruent is not going to be enough information. So again, on this one, no, it's not enough information, because unfortunately those consecutive interior angles are not showing me that it's supplementary. So same type of problem, same type of answer, just a little different on what that picture looks like. Alright, so you've got 3 left, 11, 12, and 13, so if you would, go ahead and pause the video, give those a try, and then come back and see how you did. Alright, hopefully you did okay on 11, 12, and 13. So with 11, the information that they gave us initially really wasn't very helpful. So I went ahead and I filled in with figuring out linear pair the inside as well. So linear pair to 89 would be 91, and then same for up here. So at that point, then I actually have a couple of different options that I could use for my justification. I could use corresponding angles because now I have corresponding both with the 89 and the 91s, or I could use consecutive interior since the interior now adds up to 180. Either of those would work. Number 12, alternate interior angles. That one's pretty easy. Alternate interior angles are congruent. And then number 13, 120 and 60, we've got consecutive interior angles that are supplementary. So all three of those are yes. Hopefully you did okay on those. Alright, we are going to move on. We are going to move on to the back. So 14, 15, and 16, we've seen problems similar to these before. Again, there's going to be some given angles in your picture. You need to determine if they should be congruent or if they should be supplementary based off of our four pairs that we've been talking about. So these problems want us to find the value of x that makes the two lines parallel. So no justification. We don't need to go back and fill in all of the angles on these. These are just a little bit shorter problems. So looking at number 14, I've got 2x plus 30 and 7x minus 50. So when I look at those angles appear to be in the same position, which means they're corresponding, and I know corresponding angles are congruent. So 2x plus 30, I'm going to set equal to 7x minus 50. And then I need to solve, so subtract over 2x, add over 50. So we get 5x equals 80. And when I divide by 5, x ends up being 16. Okay, so there was an example of consecutive. Looks like we've got another example, or excuse me, an example of corresponding. Looks like we've got another example of corresponding here, and then here is an example of consecutive. So I will let you guys pause the video, finish up 15, refer to 14 if you need help, and then 16 consecutive. Alright, so on 14 you should have gotten 16, we did that one. 15, you should have gotten 10, set those two angles equal to each other, solve to get x equals 10, and then 16. 16 we said they were consecutive, they were right next to each other, so both of those angles together you had to set equal to 180, and when you solve you should get 8. Okay, so those are pretty straightforward problems, a little less work when all you have to do is solve for x. Alright, next, another kind of review problem. We've done a few like these already. They're starting you with angle 57 down here, and they're not asking you to find all of them, just some of them. So first one they want me to find is angle 4. Well, angle 4 and angle 57 are in the same spot, so I know those are going to be corresponding. They're going to be the same. So 57 put over here, and then for my justification, well, I do see my parallel line symbols in my figure. So for these, I'm going to start it with parallel lines because so having parallel lines gives me my congruent corresponding angles. Okay, then they want me to find angle 2. So angle 2, I've got a couple different options. I can say vertical angles, 2 and 4 are vertical, or from 57, those are alternate exterior. So either way you want to look at that for the justification is fine, does not matter to me. So I'll just say on this one, because of my parallel lines, I've got alternate exterior angles that are congruent. Angle 6, again, multiple options. We've got corresponding, we've got alternate interior, or we've got vertical from the original. So 57 degrees again, we'll just go vertical on this one, vertical angle theorem, just keep it simple. And then lastly, last one they want us to find angle 7. So angle 7, we really don't have a whole lot to help us out. We don't have corresponding, we don't have alternate exterior, so really linear pair is going to be all that works for number 7. So 180 minus 57 is going to be 123 because of linear pair theorem. So just a quick review. 3.2, both lessons 3.2 and 3.3 will have problems like these that you can work through and find all those angles. Alright, very last thing on this lesson, we've got just a couple problems left. Again, pictures like what we did earlier, where maybe they'll give you corresponding angles, maybe they'll give you consecutive interior, but on these problems they are wanting us to find the value of x and then go back and label all of the angles. So one extra step on these, again, we aren't going to be justifying, but we do need to go back and label all of our angles. So for number 21, looks like I've got corresponding angles again, so I know my corresponding angles are congruent. So for writing my equation, 2x plus 25 equals 7x minus 5. So to solve, subtract 2x, add 5. So it looks like I get 30 equals 5x. So when I divide by 5, x is going to be 6. So now to plug that back in, 6 times 7, 42, minus 5 is 37. And then 12 plus 25 is also 37, so that's good. Both of those needed to be 37. They needed to be the same. So I know the vertical angles are also going to be the same. And then to figure out my other 4 angles, I just need to figure out the linear pairs. So 180 minus 37 is 143. So I can fill in 143 for all of those angles as well. So just one extra step from the problems we did earlier, finding x, but then plugging it back in to find the rest of the angles. So go ahead and pause the video and finish up 22 and 23, and then you can come back and check your answers. Alright, there is 22. So for 22 you had consecutive interior. So you had to add them together, set them equal to 180. Should have gotten x is 36. And when you plugged it back in, angles are 36 and 144. And then for 23, I like these problems. Everything is going to be 90 at the end because I've got a 90-degree angle marking. So I set that 90-degree angle marking equal to 4x plus 10 because they are alternate exterior. End up getting x is 20, and then that worked out just fine. If you have any questions, please make sure you stop by and see me.